Three men walked into a Scottish mountain in 1892. Only one walked out, and what he described living inside that rock has never been explained. Here's the thing about train tunnels. You're not just cutting through stone, you're cutting through time, layers of earth that haven't seen light in millions of years. Most of the time, you find nothing but rock and water. But sometimes you find doorways, and sometimes something on the other side finds you. Before I tell you what happened beneath the Cairngorm Mountains, drop a like and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. The year was 1892. A train company needed to punch a tunnel through the Scottish Highlands, 3/4 of a mile through solid granite. They called it the Drumochter Extension. It should have taken 2 years. It took 14 months, and it cost something that nobody ever put in the official reports. I found this account in a collection of letters stored at the University of Edinburgh. The man who wrote them was named William Calder. He was 34 years old. He worked as a foreman on the blasting crew. His letters stopped in November 1892, but his final entries describe something that doesn't fit in any history book. This is what he wrote. We arrived at the site in late August when the heather still held purple across the hills. The camp sat in a shallow glen 2 miles from the nearest village. Canvas tents for the laborers, wooden huts for the supervisors, a cookhouse that smelled of mutton and coal smoke. I bunked with 8 other men in a hut that leaked when the rain came sideways, which was often. The company had hired workers from across Scotland and Ireland, hard men, quiet men, men who understood that the mountain didn't care about their plans. There was a Glaswegian named Duncan Morrow who handled the explosives, steady hands, never smiled. There was a young Irishman called Brennan who sang hymns while he worked and crossed himself before every blast. There was a Norwegian engineer named Håkon who had worked tunnels in the Alps. He was the one who first said the rock here felt different. I didn't know what he meant. Not yet. Now, let me stop here for a second. You might be wondering, why would anyone write letters about tunnel construction? Here's why. William Calder was writing to his brother, a geologist in London. He described everything: the composition of the rock, the water flow, the strange formations they encountered. Most of it was ordinary technical detail until October 14th. That's when the letters changed. On that date, Calder wrote a single sentence at the top of his letter. "We have found something that should not exist." Keep that sentence in your mind, because what they discovered that day would lead to 3 deaths, 1 disappearance, and a section of tunnel that was sealed with concrete and never reopened. The crew had been drilling northeast through dense metamorphic rock for 6 weeks. Progress was slow. The granite fought every inch. Drill bits snapped. Men worked in shifts that blurred together. The air inside the tunnel was cold and wet. On October 14th, the morning blast went wrong. The charges were set in a pattern along the tunnel face. Duncan lit the fuses in sequence. The crew retreated to the safe distance of 200 yards. The explosion should have shattered a section of rock 3 feet deep. Instead, it punched through into open space. The entire tunnel face collapsed inward. Dust and debris rushed toward the crew. The sound echoed for almost a full minute. When the air cleared, they saw darkness beyond the broken rock. Not another pocket of loose stone, a void, a chamber. Duncan and Brennan volunteered to look first. They took oil lamps and a length of rope. The hole was wide enough for a man to crouch through. Calder wrote that he stood at the entrance and watched their lamps grow smaller as they moved inside. The light bent around a corner he couldn't see. 3 minutes passed. Then Duncan's voice came back through the dark, not shouting, not panicked, but strange in a way Calder couldn't describe. He said Duncan sounded like a man speaking underwater. He said one word: "Come." Now, here's what you need to understand about Victorian tunnel crews. These weren't superstitious men. They had seen cave-ins. They had seen men crushed by falling stone. They had seen floods that filled shafts in minutes. They understood risk. But what they found inside that chamber was something none of them had a framework for. Calder entered with Håkon the Norwegian. The chamber was roughly circular, 30 feet across. The ceiling rose to a height of perhaps 15 feet, but it was not natural. The walls were smooth, too smooth. The surface had been shaped with tools, not picks, not chisels, but something that left shallow grooves in a spiral pattern. In the center of the chamber stood a single stone column. It was pale, almost white, and covered with markings that did not resemble any language Calder knew. He copied several of the symbols in his letter. They looked geometric, precise, cold. Brennan stood near the column and refused to touch it. Duncan circled the room with his lamp held high. Håkon knelt and examined the floor. That's when he found the bones. Not human. That was the first thing Håkon said. The bones were scattered near the base of the column in a shallow depression. They were thin, hollow. Some were curved at angles that didn't match any animal Håkon could name. Calder picked one up. He said it weighed almost nothing. The surface was smooth and dry. Brennan crossed himself and started praying. Duncan told him to stop. But here's the detail that stayed with me. Calder wrote that the bones were not old. They were clean, no dust, no decay, no sign of age at all. Someone or something had been here recently. That first night, nothing happened. The crew sealed the entrance to the chamber with a canvas tarp and wooden boards. The tunnel supervisor sent word to the company headquarters in Edinburgh. They were told to continue excavation. They were told to document anything unusual. They were told that a geologist would be sent within the week. The geologist never arrived, because by the third night, the tapping started. Calder described the sound in careful detail. It came from beneath the camp, not inside the tunnel, beneath the ground itself. 2 strikes, a pause, 2 strikes. The rhythm was consistent, mechanical, deliberate. At first, the men assumed it was shifting rock. Tunnels create stress in stone. Pressure releases over time. But this sound had intention. It moved. On the first night, it came from the direction of the tunnel mouth. On the second night, it came from directly beneath the bunkhouse. On the third night, it came from multiple directions at once. And on the fourth night, it stopped completely. That silence was worse. Let me pause here to remind you of something. Everything I'm telling you comes from letters, personal letters, not published accounts, not newspaper stories. William Calder had no reason to invent this. He was writing to his brother. He was describing what he saw. And what happened next, he almost didn't describe. His handwriting changes in the final letters. The lines shake. The words become harder to read. Whatever happened on October 21st, it broke him in a different way. The crew had posted guards after the tapping stopped. 2 men stayed awake each night, walking the perimeter of the camp with lanterns. They carried hammers, not for fighting, but for signaling. 3 strikes meant emergency. On October 21st, the camp woke to 3 hammer strikes, then silence. Calder grabbed his lamp and ran toward the sound. Håkon followed. Brennan stayed in the bunkhouse doorway, frozen. They found Ross first. His lamp had gone out. His hands were at his sides. Calder called his name. No response. Håkon touched his shoulder. Ross turned. His eyes were open, but they weren't seeing anything in front of him. His mouth moved slowly, forming words with no sound. Then he collapsed. When they turned him over, his chest wasn't moving. Duncan was gone. His lamp was found near the tunnel mouth, still lit, sitting upright on the ground. His hammer lay 20 feet away. There were marks in the dirt, not footprints, not boot prints, long, narrow grooves that led toward the entrance to the chamber. Håkon wanted to follow them. Calder refused. They waited until dawn. When the light came, 3 men entered the chamber. Calder, Håkon, and the tunnel supervisor, a man named Crawford who had arrived from the main camp overnight. The chamber had changed. The stone column now showed new markings, fresh cuts that hadn't been there before. The spiral grooves on the walls were deeper. The air smelled sharp, metallic, and in the corner, pressed against the curved stone, Duncan's body. He was arranged carefully. His arms were crossed, his eyes were closed, his face showed no sign of violence, but his chest had 3 vertical cuts, clean lines that went through fabric and flesh without tearing. Crawford backed out of the chamber immediately. He ordered the entrance sealed, not with canvas this time, with explosives. Brennan set the charges himself. His hands shook, but his work was precise. The blast brought down the tunnel ceiling for 20 feet beyond the chamber entrance. Crawford declared the section unstable and ordered the crew to begin a bypass route around the collapse. The official report said nothing about the chamber, nothing about Duncan, nothing about Ross. 2 men died in a cave-in. That was the story. But that's not where the account ends. Here's the part that no one expected. The ceiling didn't work. Within 3 days, the tapping returned. It was quieter now, muffled, like something knocking from very far away. But it was there, and it was moving toward the surface. Calder wrote that the crew abandoned the site on October 27th. Not officially, the company never authorized it. The men simply left. They walked away in small groups. Some headed toward the village. Some followed the rail line back to civilization. Some disappeared into the hills and were never seen again. Brennan was one of those. He left his belongings in the bunkhouse. His Bible was open to Psalm 139. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. No one ever found him. The last letter William Calder wrote was dated November 3rd, 1892. He was in a boarding house in Pitlochry, 20 miles from the site. He wrote that he could still hear the tapping. Not loud, not constant, but there, beneath the floorboards, beneath the street, beneath everything. He wrote, "There is a world beneath this one. It has always been there. We were not meant to find the doors, but now that we have, something knows we exist, and it is patient." He signed the letter and never wrote again. The Drumochter extension was completed in 1894, but the route was changed. The bypass around the collapsed section became the permanent path. The original tunnel was never reopened. In 1923, a surveying team attempted to excavate the sealed section. They dug for 3 days before abandoning the project. The official reason, unstable geology. The unofficial reason, according to one surveyor's journal that surfaced in the 1970s, sounds from beneath the rubble that did not match any known geological phenomenon. The tunnel remains sealed today. Here's what stays with me about this account. The creatures, if that's what they were, never attacked in frenzy. They never rushed. They never showed desperation. They moved with patience. They waited. They watched. And when the men left, they let them go. Just like in Nevada, just like in a dozen other accounts I found from mines and tunnels and excavation sites around the world. Something lives beneath us, something old, something that existed long before we started digging. And every time we break into their spaces, they notice. If you made it this far, drop a comment telling me what you think lived in that Scottish mountain. Was it something ancient, Something we have no name for? Or was it something that has a name that cultures around the world have whispered for thousands of years? Hit subscribe if you want more accounts like this one. I've got stories from Japan, from South Africa, from deep beneath the Alps. The underground is not empty, and the next time you hear tapping in a place it shouldn't be, remember this story. I'll see you in the next one. There is a world beneath this one.